This is, this is actually America's Mayor Live. Tonight, as you know, between 7 and 8, I'd usually be on, I'd be on Lindell TV as well as on X. I'm always on X because I'm attached to X. But Mike Lindell, who's about the nicest guy there ever was, has given the whole staff the 4th of July off. Many of them are enjoying it at the White House, I would imagine. But I couldn't be without you. This is a very important night, and we're going to divide this show into two things here. We're going to spend a little time on the American Constitution. See, my shirt and my jacket. Okay, we're all set. That's my jacket. My shirt is a Constitution shirt. It has the names of all the great heroes who put their lives at risk signing this. But first, we're going to begin with there are two beautiful songs, neither of which made the number one spot of a national anthem. But many people think they're more beautiful. I don't. Maybe because I got used to the national anthem and I love it. And it begins baseball games and football games and everything else. And I got so offended when people kneeled down. Couldn't stand that. But I do believe that these two other songs, one of them is God Bless America, which we'll play a little later. Maybe we'll play it with the introduction that they often, the poetic introduction, they often don't play. And they should play it because then you find out it's really a hymn. It's a religious song. But so is this. Some people think this is even more beautiful. This is America the Beautiful. And everyone knows the first verse of it. And everyone knows that the best version of it is Ray Charles. Although I sometimes like it better with a chorus because it has a more military sort of feeling to it. I think we're going to play the Ray Charles because it's the one people know the best. But this song has some verses in it after the first verse that are absolutely beautiful and absolutely poetic. And it always had one that I love the best. And it's the last verse, "Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crowned thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea." Well, I didn't know what alabaster meant. And I actually had to look it up again to make sure I was right, but I am right. Alabaster is a white stone, usually used like in sculpture and in beautiful bridges. And so it's a white gleaming stone. So we're saying, you could substitute gleaming cities or beautiful cities or the word shiny would be a little bit too vernacular, I guess. But I remember as a kid when we would sing that, I would say to myself, "What the heck is alabaster?" But this is absolutely gorgeous. So we're going to play it now at the beginning of the show, and I want you to pay attention. The first verse, the first stanza, rather. You're going to know this. You probably sang it a million times. The last three are just as beautiful, and I have to say I don't have them memorized. I recognize them when I hear them, but we really should sing this thing straight through. So let's play this as our beginning hymn, and that's what it is. It was written by Catherine Lee Bates toward the end of the 19th century, and then the music, and it was written for kind of slightly different music. And then Samuel Augustus Howe wrote this music for it. And when he wrote this music for it, it became very, very popular. And I try to discover the original music too. But let's listen to America the Beautiful.
Oh, beautiful, far heroes prove
himself, well, country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, make God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and ever again divine. And you know, when I was in school, we used to sing it something like this. Listen here. Oh, beautiful, far spacious skies, far amber waves of grain, far purple mountain majesties, above the fruited plain. But now wait a minute, I'm talking about America, sweet America. You know, God done shed his grace on thee. He crowned thy good. Yes, he did. Every brotherhood from sea to shining sea. You know, I wish I had somebody to help me sing this. America, I love you, America. You see, my God, he done shed his grace on thee, and you ought to love him for it, because he crowned thy good. He told me he would. Every brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh Lord, I thank you, Lord. Rendition. What a beautiful song. What great video. I mean, it has to be played that way. It's telling us how beautiful our country is, and then you get to see how beautiful our country is. My father and mother would often say to me, why would you travel to Europe? There's so much to see in America. And when I took my first trip to Europe, they were like angry at me. Why don't you go? I mean, there are much more beautiful things to see in America. Even though I was going to go to Italy, I would have thought they would have liked that. But no, they were like, you know, they were brought up, they were first generation. All my grandparents were born in Italy. And both my grandparents, set of grandparents, maternal and paternal, were married in the met and married in the United States. It's very strange. You know, it's like, I think at least one of them had known each other from Italy. They didn't, although they came, you know, from places relatively close to each other. And they were, on both sides of the family, rigid patriots. My grandfather was, my father's father must have had a group of friends. They came from northern Italy and from Tuscany. And people from Tuscany, my father would say, often think they're better than anybody else, and they're not. And some of them would like complain about America not having this and America not having that. And my grandfather used to really let him have it. He would say, why don't you go back? You got enough money now to get a little trip back. I mean, If you don't like it here, nobody's keeping you here. And he never let his kids learn Italian, nor did my maternal grandparents. Both of my grandmothers, who were born in Italy and came here as infants, couldn't remember Italian. My mother didn't learn it at home. She learned it a bit in school, and I knew some of it from Latin. I literally knew more Italian than my Italian grandparents. It was a different kind of thing. They were American, and that was it, boy. My grandfather used to maintain it probably should be better to say American Italian instead of Italian American, because that was the order that it had to be now. Isn't it so different than the way? I mean, the greatness of American immigration was a word that was necessarily part of it for most of our history, but we didn't say it with it, but we knew it, called assimilation. Immigration worked in this country so brilliantly because people became American. It's always been a problem in Europe, and now a big problem, right? Because people remained separate. They stayed, if Italians went to live somewhere, they remained with the Italians. And if people came from Asia, they didn't integrate into the society. Germany is having that problem now. England, France, and Germany are having that problem with the Muslim population, where in some places they want to have Sharia law. Here, everybody wanted to have American law. That's why they came here. They didn't, I mean, as my grandfather, had these arguments and won them all, he often won them all. Do you want to go back? To which he would get, no. So there was like this love of America that you can feel in that song. And now for some time, and some time can be more than 20 years, I think on purpose, the left wing has created an uncomfortable feeling about patriotism. Like it's a form of nationalism, some form of Nazism. Of course, that's absurd. Love of country isn't Nazism. Of course you should love your country and make it better. So the words of this song are just, they're a prayer, right? We ask God to shed his grace on America and crown us with brotherhood. We remember our pilgrim past, who set up a thoroughfare for freedom across the wilderness. We forget that. I mean, we talk about how they conquered. They also civilized and humanized. Maybe they didn't do it all perfectly. Maybe some of it was even mean and vicious, but a lot of it wasn't, and not all of them were. And not all of the people they met up with were angels either. Nor were they here forever. They came from Asia. I mean, when they say, well, America was colonized by who? What about the people coming over the land bridge from Alaska? They got here a little earlier, and they didn't organize it in a way that it looked like it was untouchable. I mean, there were hardly any cities, there were no buildings, no recorded history. They had a culture, but did they have a civilization? There's a distinction between the two. I mean, if they did, it certainly was committed to writing. Quite a bit different than Western civilization, right? Going back to the Greeks and the Romans and the Jews. And God, mend thine every flaw. The concept in America is to constantly be creating a more perfect union. It's an acceptance of the fact that we're human and we do things wrong and we need to correct ourselves. God, mend thine every flaw. Confirm thy soul in self-control, thy liberty in law. We kind of lost out under Biden for a few years. Well, I sure felt like we did. Who more than self their country loved? Is that true? Do you love your country more than yourself? There better be a lot of you that do. Otherwise, we're not going to keep it. And mercy more than life. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. And then we asked for God to shed his grace on us. What a beautiful, beautiful song, and what a beautiful poem, and what a beautiful prayer. Now to the Declaration of Independence, which is what we celebrate today, except let's begin with the fact that every American holiday has quirks. You know, Memorial Day, people without thinking say, Happy Memorial Day. And of course, Memorial Day is a day to remember the dead, those who died in war. It is a little inappropriate to say Happy Memorial Day. But I don't, and I know some people get very offended by that, and I don't like it, but I understand. I understand. And they get Veterans Day, Memorial Day confused, and because our holidays have lost some of their rationale that drove them originally. This was a day of great picnics and parades. Now it's a day of mostly, having fun. Well, that's okay. But what happened to all the parades and those parades are important. They show us our commonality with each other. Well, this idea of a Declaration of Independence. It was in the minds of the colonists even before the war broke out. But when the war broke out, it sort of pushed it over the top. So just to set it chronologically, officially the war with England broke out on April 19th, 1775. Remember, we celebrated that a short while ago, and we're here in New Hampshire, and we're pretty close to Lexington and Concord, where it broke out in Massachusetts. No one really knows who fired first, whether it was the British troops or the colonists, but they did, and it ignited all of the colonies who had been working together for several years to deal with the oppression of the King of England, which had been going on for over a decade. And then finally, because of that, they convened the Second Continental Congress, and they meet in Pennsylvania. They meet in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at the beautiful Independence Hall, which you can go see anytime you want. And there, they convene a session of Congress that is now going to support an army. And of course, they select George Washington as the president of that army, often referred to as a ragtag army. America didn't really have a standing army. At best, it had militia in the various colonies that really weren't all that close to each other. They kind of lived quite separate existences, and our overlord, the British Empire, tried to keep them separate. they weren't very happy about the committees of correspondence that was started by mostly the Virginians and the Bostonians, and brought in everything else. And they had been communicating for quite some time. It's probably their work that brought about ultimately the Declaration of Independence, the organized army. So they had been meeting for some time. The war had been going on. The war had not been really going well, but it was clear we were at war with England, and therefore there was no point in not declaring it, because the feeling was that we had to have allies if we were going to be able to defeat this biggest empire in the world, and that we had to make our case to get those allies. So, there were a lot of debates as to what's the main purpose of the Declaration of Independence. I would say it is not to rally the American people. The American people were already rallied. We had already voted for war. We had even voted for independence. This declaration was to tell the world why we were doing this, and to gain their support to the extent that we could, to show them how we were being subjugated to a tremendous amount of oppression by King George. And actually, on July 2nd, 1776, the Second Continental Congress approved independence. So this was written, or actually promulgated, after we were already independent, to explain our independence. But it had been in the works. In June, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia stood up and proposed a resolution that these colonies have the right to be free and should be free. That resolution was tabled and given to a committee to write an appropriate explanation of what we were doing. And that is what led to the Declaration of Independence. The committee, of course, the most famous members of the committee were Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin and John Adams. Also, there was a member from Pennsylvania and a member from New York. And they spent about 4 weeks themselves as a committee debating the text, what the text was going to be. And it's, if you've ever, as a lawyer, I've often written briefs with 3 other lawyers, and you really have to pick somebody to write it. So the choices really were Adams or Jefferson. The other two members were Roger Sherman of Connecticut and Robert Livingston of New York, and of course Benjamin Franklin. There are 2 stories as to who got selected. One is that Benjamin Franklin asked Adams to sublimate his rather imposing ego, because Franklin believed that Jefferson was a better writer. Another version is that Adams, on his own, sublimated his ego, maybe possibly with the help of his wonderful wife, Abigail, who had tremendous admiration for Jefferson all throughout their lives. I mean, remember, we'll jump ahead until July 4th in 1825, when these 2 men died within 4 hours of each other. Jefferson died before Adams. Adams didn't know that. And as he was dying, he said, well, thank God Jefferson still lives. didn't know that Jefferson had been dead for 4 hours. But the two of them had a very volatile relationship that was very good for the country because it allowed us to have eloquent, brilliant men arguing different parts and different ways of organizing this government. But then when they retired from government, they became best friends and have a correspondence that's probably among the most brilliant government correspondence ever written. Boy, could we use either one or both back. So it was decided that Jefferson would write it, draft it. That draft, by the way, exists in the Library of Congress. If you ever want to go read it and compare it to the edits of it, it'd be really interesting to do that. I did that a long time ago when back in the 70s, I think. You know when I did it? I did it on the 200th, I did it on the bicentennial. I was living in Washington during 1976 when we celebrated the 200th anniversary of the Constitution. And one of those days I slipped out of the Justice Department and looked at it. And, you know, I had to do it fast. I had to get back to work. It is remarkably close, although there were 83, I think I have the number right. If I'm off by just a little. There were 83 edits from Jefferson's draft. Nothing substantive but one. What do you think that was? What do you think the one that Jefferson was upset about? Nobody ever mentions it when they take a statue down, huh? He wanted to blame the King of England for requiring us to keep slavery, because when he was a young legislator in the House of Burgesses at 27 years old, Jefferson had introduced a resolution to free slaves. He almost ruined his political career at the time. So when we listen to the Declaration of Independence and we say, how can it say all men are created equal when certainly black men were slaves at the time? They weren't equal. Why would Jefferson write that? Did you ever hear of a poison pill? Jefferson knew that if he could get that language past him, that would sit there igniting the conscience of Americans. And over a period of time, we would limit and then eliminate slavery. His biggest problem was his fear that if he did it and it were done precipitously, it would create a tremendous amount of violence, and that on both sides, people had to be made ready for it. Otherwise, it could create its own revolution. Maybe he was right about that. Maybe he was wrong about it. But there probably wasn't a day in Jefferson's life when the unfairness of slavery didn't press on him. And that was true of many of them. And of course, many of them were abolitionists, particularly all those from the North. And many of them eventually died because they were abolitionists. So when we talk about slavery and the horror of it and the black mark on our history, all true. But then we have to also talk about the bravery and the courage and the moral courage of those who opposed it, and the 300,000 or so men who gave up their lives to free black men and women. That's also part of the story, because America is not a perfect country, but it's always seeking to be. So the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, to understand it more easily, is divided into, I would say, you could divide it into Okay, so you could divide it into 4 or 5 parts, whichever you prefer. I prefer 5 because I really do think there's a bit of a distinction between one part of it and the other. So the very first paragraph is really an introduction to tell you what this is all about. The who, what, when, where, and why of a great writer who is about to write one of the most important documents in the history of the world. This document has led to the freedom of many, many countries. France, Haiti, you can go on and on, all use these words. The first paragraph is the introduction. The second paragraph is really the preamble, and the preamble sets forth our rights, the rights that we are relying on for this very, very surprising and dangerous action of revolting against the strongest military power in the world. The third, and by far the longest part of the Declaration, is the list of grievances, of which I believe there are 28. The ones that we have against the king, and an explanation of how he has taken away the rights that we possess, not from him, not from each other, not from government, but the rights that are given to us by God. And then the formal Declaration of Independence, and maybe the most dangerous part of the document, the signatures of these men who were traitors and would have, if caught, been hung. They all knew it. They discussed it many times, and they even would tease about it. So the very, very first part is the introduction, explaining what we're about to do. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bonds which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So now you see that this declaration, although, yes, written to the American people, but the American people 2 days earlier had already declared independence. This is written to the world in order to calm down those who would oppose us and win over those who might support us. Because at this point, no one was supporting us but our 13 colonies that were rather disorganized and certainly not ready for war against the greatest military power in the world. And then we go into the preamble, which sets forth our argument for where these rights come from, hoping that there'll be universal agreement with this, or close to universal agreement. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We might have written, we hope these truths are self-evident, because if they're not, they're all going to die. That all men are created equal. Now, that's the poison pill. Jefferson might have been the most brilliant president we ever had. John Kennedy certainly thought so. There's no doubt that President Trump does. He knew that by putting those words in there, immediately people are going to say, well, what about the slaves? And since this is our founding document, it was his confident view that this would eventually prevail. There are even writings of his, which we can dig out and show you when later on, when he's out of government, when he explains why and how he did this. Adams was fully aware of why he did this. And it was in part because they refused to allow him to put in a grievance against the king, how he had nurtured and demanded that slavery remain. So this was put in as a contradiction. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Basically, unalienable meaning they can't be taken away. And where do they come from? Not the government, not the other citizens, not even from a democracy. They come from above. And he made in the beginning, he also made, you might notice, sort of an exception for those who might not believe in God, where he says either nature or nature's God. So one would look at this as either natural, if you don't believe in God, these are natural rights that you have as a human being, because human beings are important and life is important. This is a result of Western civilization, where humanity is important, lives are important. You would never, at this period of time, ever get a document like this from any other civilization that was presently existing, because they didn't value human life the way Western civilization did. Western civilization can be described really as a story of how humanity becomes more and more important, which is why even the whole subject area of humanities comes out of Western civilization. Man is so important in the Bible, the Old Testament, that God talks to him. A man is so important to the Greeks that they can spend hours and hours and hours using the mind to try to figure out the cosmos. Man is so important for the Christians that God becomes man. So humanity and human life is precious. So he argues that these rights are unalienable. King has no right to interfere with these. These don't come from the king, they come from God. That among these, what are these inalienable rights? They're not limited to this. Remember what he says here. Please pay attention to the language. It's really important. I mean, he wrote this very carefully, and as I said, there were 83 edits. And he was a lawyer, so he understood the significance of every word in this document. And notice he says, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are. What that means is that there are more of them, but these are the most important ones. And what are those? The right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to the pursuit of happiness. Life means no one has the right to take your life, certainly not government. Liberty means freedom, the right to freedom. The pursuit of happiness means to have a decent life. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. Not the king. Big difference, huh? The world just changed. This was not a generally accepted right. Now, philosophers for 100 years have been writing about this. And if you want a place where many of these ideas came from to Jefferson, that would be from the English philosopher John Locke. But these were things that philosophers wrote about. They didn't inhere in any government. The power of governing came from, if it did come from God, it came from God to the king, not from God to the people. Just think of how revolutionary that concept was, and how that concept would not only rock King George III, but every monarch in Europe in particular, the important ones and the petty little ones. Men derive their rights from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it. Whoa. King, if you take our rights away, we can alter you or abolish you. I don't know, go put yourself back then, huh? What arrogant group of farmers these were, huh? I don't know if you've seen the play Hamilton, which has its merits, considerable merits, and of course is somewhat inaccurate, as any of these versions are. But they do a very, very good job of how this was also shocking to George III, who they make into a bit of a fool, which he may have been. And he may have had some mental illness. I don't know. I mean, it's always been speculated that he did. But in any event, can you imagine how impudent this was? It's the right of the people against the King of England to alter or to abolish it. And remember, these words are reverberating in France. What did France have? A king. They were reverberating in Spain. What did Spain have? A king and a queen. There were a lot of kings then. There was the Holy Roman Emperor, who theoretically ruled all of Europe. And this puny little colony, which most of them knew very little about, except they all ran around like savages, this puny little colony is saying, if we don't like the way you're governing us, king, we can get rid of you. Well, it's a lot more than that, but if you're interfering with those rights that come from God, not you, we can interfere with you. It is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. They get to set up their form of government. It doesn't get imposed on them, which maybe can tell you some of the problems we had in the 19th and 20th century with all the, Congress of Vienna and the great powers dividing up the world and creating governments after the First World War and the Second World War. How much of that has led to chaos, killing, civil wars that are going on to this day? If this, an unknown caller, we are not going to respond to an unknown caller, right? Ted is going to take care of it. You should see what Ted does to the unknown callers. Laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Here we are, only part of the way through the second paragraph, and Thomas Jefferson has turned the world around. This is the concept of the world for the last 15, 1800 years was that, kings govern the world with power given to them by God or some form of God. Even though in general, the power usually was given to them because they killed somebody to get it. Maybe the prior king, right? I mean, it had nothing to do with God. It had to do with revolution and murder and killing and corruption. Laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So their government is left to them. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. So he's basically saying that people, due to inertia, will accept a great deal, even if their rights are being jeopardized, in order to have an orderly world. And it's a function of human nature. It has to go pretty far before you get to the point of revolution. But then there's a big but here. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute, now capitalized, despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies. And such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. Then he goes on to list 28 examples of how the king has trampled their human rights. We can summarize those as passing laws without their consent. We remember, I think, from our grammar school days, taxation without representation. Well, that would apply to everything, not only taxation, but imposition of laws and duties and obligations without the consent of us, the American government, the American people. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of their own. He has refused to pass laws that were requested for the accommodation of large districts of people and their needs. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual and uncomfortable. In other words, he's called sessions of government that would be difficult for us to be part of. He's dissolved representative houses in the colonies that appeared to not agree with him. I'm paraphrasing, by the way. He has, at times, suspended legislative powers. He's imprisoned people. He's endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners. In other words, he's refused to allow us to bring people other than people from England who he controls into the country, because he wanted absolute and complete control over us. He's obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing local judiciary power. We were subject to the justice of the king across a big ocean. We did not impart our own justice. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without our consent. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to civil power, meaning they could do anything they wanted to us. He has courted large bodies of armed troops among us. Without our consent, our homes were used for soldiers to live there at will. For quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. For protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws and establishing an arbitrary government, for taking away our charters, abolishing our valuable laws at will, and altering fundamentally our form of government, for suspending our legislatures. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coast, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries, German mercenaries, to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy of the head of a civilized union. He's restrained our fellow citizens and taken them captive on the high seas and required them to take arms against their country, to become executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we've petitioned for redress. Our repeated petitions have been unanswered. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We've warned them of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we've conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. And that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with the firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. And then follows their signatures, which would constitute a sentence of death if they were captured by the British, which is why those words, we pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, are extremely powerful and very emotional words. Well, that's what we're celebrating today. Maybe the most consequential government document, certainly in the history of the world. What would be equal? The Ten Commandments, the Magna Carta? Not really. It took a long time for the Magna Carta to really become meaningful. This became meaningful right away. And for this, we're thankful. We're thankful to God that we had these people with such great and tremendous courage. And I will conclude by saying, doesn't it remind you of that day in Butler County when Donald Trump came this far away from being killed? And instead of staying down low and going to Joe Biden's basement, he stood up, put his hand in the air, and he said, "Fight, fight, fight." That's the blood of our forefathers that you see there. And we still have it. But we have to thank them and honor them and pray that we can live up to them. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we will begin the usual hour of America's Mayor Live. But I say a prayer of thanksgiving to God that at the right time and at the right place, He provided these great men who could think beyond the years. God bless America. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month.
Wow.
Including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax, channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast. These deals are selling out.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep green, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because we like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're gonna go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee. Anyone? Oh, here I am. This is Rudy Giuliani. That's me. And this is America's Mayor Live on the 4th of July, on the 249th birthday of the greatest nation in the history of the world, for which we are enormously proud. And we should begin with our national anthem.
We're going to play the national anthem right after the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
Oh, Battle Hymn of the Republic first.
And then the
All
national
right.
anthem.
I don't know how my show can live up to that. What a beginning. The battle hymn of the Republic and the greatest anthem in the world. Well, it gets you off to a good start. I tell you, we're coming into our 249th birthday on a real winning streak. I really don't know if America has ever gone through a beginning of a presidency with so much unbelievably positive change, much of which was thought to be impossible a year ago. We'll outline it for you. Somehow, just outlining it isn't enough. I go back to last year as I contemplated this. I of course, always had somewhere deep inside as a normal human being the fear that even though I was sure that Donald Trump would win, that my goodness, I mean, maybe if 2020 hadn't happened, I wouldn't have even had that fear. But I saw close up and personal what happened in 2020. Even when he won the next morning, it took me about 4 or 5 days to be sure that he had won. I expected that somebody was going to come along and start cheating. And the press was going to applaud them. So to see these things that we debated so much over the years, but to see them happen so quickly, to see our border become secure in a flash, to see him in these battles with the courts. I mean, it's amazing. They've gone from lawfare in prosecuting and suing innocent people to having found a group of judges that are a disgrace to the oath that they took, issuing nationwide injunctions when they just represent and have power over a small district, and then accusing the president of not abiding by limits. It's as if they have no limits. There's no such thing as a branch of our government that has no limits. That's how we become what the Declaration of Independence was taking us away from. But the winning streak is remarkable. Ted, can we put up on this? This is a. Pardon me?
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Because I think this might be a very helpful. There are more than these, but I think maybe we'll use this. This is from the New York Post, and like me, they supported Donald Trump, and I think they have criticisms, and when they do, I jump all over them. But I think they're very proud. I mean, they stood with him. I mean, they stood with him when their paper was suspended, basically. Can you imagine that? The oldest paper in America, subjected to censorship in the middle of a presidential election. And that isn't Nazism, fascism, or some form of it. Do you agree with me? I ask it this way because I know this is a difficult question, but I really wish we could just talk. But do you agree with me that you never expected that the government would be able to engage in that kind of censorship? Here, a document comes along that is clearly the presidential candidate's son document, in which it talks about having given him millions of dollars. Even now, you haven't been focused on the relevant parts of that hard drive. Even the Republicans shy away from it, like Comer. And I bet even now, when I say this, there'll be people who are surprised, even though I've said it what, 500 times, Ted? Do you know that there's an email in December of, I believe, 2019 or 2018, in which, in writing, Hunter Biden admits that for 30 years he gave half of his salary to his father? Do you know that? It's in writing, which makes it a piece of evidence, a very powerful piece of evidence known as an admission, allowed to be put into evidence, and usually with a charge by a judge that this is very, very powerful evidence, because this is not even like a confession that could be maybe pressured. He voluntarily told his daughter the scheme, the racketeering scheme, the bribery scheme. For 30 years, I've been required to give Pop half my salary. For 30 years, he was making money from foreign governments that wanted favors from the United States. And his father was one of the most powerful senators, the vice president and the president. What the hell could that money be for? You don't need more than that to convict somebody. I never had that, mostly. I never had like a written out explanation of the RICO conspiracy. There's so much evidence that Joe Biden got this money when they say, there's no evidence that Joe Biden got the money. What the hell do you think an email saying that I gave half of the $60 million that I made to my father, what do you think that is? That's evidence that Joe Biden got money. Evidence is testimony or written documents. In fact, the law regards what I just told you as more powerful evidence than most, because it's spontaneous. No one was pressuring him to say that. On his own volition, he told it to his daughter because it appears as if she was going to take over some of his duties. This is a very, very, this is a family in which we can't say that all of them are crooked, but we can say it's more than just a few. There are a lot of criminals and perverts hanging around. But that was never emphasized, even to this day. There are things like that that amaze me that they're covered up. But the reality is that Trump has done so much in this period of time that it's almost impossible. I'm going to just focus on, today is the 4th. So I'm going to focus on just the last 2 weeks, all right? This is enough for an entire administration, I think. June 21st, shall we put it up now, Ted? Okay, so June 21st, Trump launches the bunker buster raid on Iran. Okay? This is something that an American president should have done 40 years ago. How about when they killed our Marines? How about when they held our hostages? How about when they killed a couple of thousand of our soldiers in Iraq? How about when they used their proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, to kill us? And Joe Biden smiled, kill some more, I don't care. Trump launched a bunker buster raid on Iran, destroying sites and setting back their program for years. And for those who are trying to minimize it, there is no way you can minimize. Let me just tell you just this fact, and you tell me who's lying here. 14 of these massive bombs were dropped on the nuclear site. 12 of them at Fordo. which is the one deep down on the ground. You got to get a half mile into the earth. Do you know how many of these bombs were dropped on Fordo? 12. Multiply 12 by 30,000 pounds. And then consider that these are concussion bombs. What that means is they don't explode when they hit the ground. They pierce when they hit the ground. They're so heavy that they can break right through stone, break right through the earth. This is 30,000 pounds coming down from 30,000 feet. And you know, if you know physics at all, you know that if a penny were dropped from the top of the Empire State Building and hit your head, it might kill you because of the force that it every foot that it comes down, there's more and more and more and more and more and more and more force on it. So can you imagine what happens with 30,000 pounds? So it drives all the way into the earth. And it explodes when it's in the earth. It pierces through. Now, why does it do that? It does that because it opens up another hole. So when the second bomb comes in, you go twice as far. And when the third bomb goes in, you go 3 times. And when the fourth bomb goes in. So, will they ever be able to use it again? I don't know. Certainly not tomorrow. Certainly not a year from now. Certainly not with the vast damage done by us, not only there, but at Natanz and Isfahan and all the damage done by the Israelis that we haven't even emphasized. This is about a $2 trillion job to catch up. They have no money. Their people are starving because they don't take care of their people. They take care of the terrorists. There's a reason why they are called the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. Why? Because they sponsor terrorism. The country could be one of the richest countries in the world. More than half of its population are below third world poverty. So, incredible accomplishment to protect the American people from nuclear weapons getting in the hands of madmen. The great fear of my boss, Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan looked at that and said, "Good work, son." Then, 2 days later, the Supreme Court gave Trump approval to deport illegal aliens to third countries. Remember the rapists, the murderers, and the perverts that were taken out of Boston? And the Democratic judge in Boston desperately wanted them back? You tell me why he wants rapists, murderers, and bums back. Just out of spite with Trump? And, well, they don't come from, they don't come from, where do we send them to, Somalia? Or, I've forgotten where we sent them. What? Well, wherever we sent them, we weren't allowed to send them. We had to send them back to the country they came from. The country they came from doesn't want them. Why do we have to be stuck with them? Supreme Court held we have a right to send them anywhere we want. So shut up, judge, and go back and, lick some other left-wing backside. June 25. I remember Biden saying this or reading it. I've never said anything, read it. And Pamela, stupid woman, he's going to destroy NATO. They don't even know what NATO is. They don't. They think it's some kind of a candy you get in the movie theaters. get a NATO bar. He's going to destroy NATO. The NATO countries, under the great leadership of their new executive director, who's a great ally of Trump and referred to him as daddy, now has them contributing 2.5 times more than they ever contributed before. They voted to put in 5% each. Everybody now is at least 3%. Biden couldn't even get England to 1%. Now, that's not just a political victory. If he can turn NATO around to being a legitimate fighting force, NATO is the third, the EU, of course, of which many of them are part of NATO, it would be the military side of it. The EU is the third largest economy in the world. US, China, EU. You know where Russia is? If you can believe their statistics, somewhere around 8 or 9. So for all he was going to destroy NATO. If you listen to the people when he was at the NATO meeting, they are, looks to me like they're tremendously motivated by his leadership. Even his worst critic, the new chancellor of Germany, was the biggest supporter of what he did to the Ayatollah. The biggest supporter, and more than willing to put troops in, and more than willing to get up to his 5%. Because I think, when they got over the shock therapy that he begins with, they realized he's doing it for their own good. They got to be able to defend themselves. They can't just rely on us. They can't just rely on us because we can't completely rely on us. We have a sick, disturbed Democrat Party at the national level that'll sell out America if they get a chance. And they'll sell out our allies. Why do you think Saudi Arabia had to go ahead and try to make a deal with Iran? Because they didn't trust that Biden would defend them. So he's telling them something for their own good. Sure, it's ideal if we can all be together. But in case we go off on another crazy Biden thing or Obama thing, you got to be able to defend yourself, like Israel learned. And I think they got it. That NATO meeting seemed to me to be about as productive a NATO meeting as we've had in a long time. Then on June 27, the Supreme Court made it clear that courts can't just issue these blanket injunctions. So Trump says, I'm going to fire these 500 people. And then some judge comes in and says, yeah, it applies all of it. You can't fire any of them. Not just the 2 who are here suing, but everybody. I get to run the agency now. The Supreme Court justices who are intellectually honest said, there's no power like that in the Constitution for us. We're not substitute presidents. We rule on constitutionality. We don't rule on the wisdom of presidents' judgments or even the Congress's judgment. And by the way, there are certain areas of power that are uniquely reserved for certain branches of government, right? The power to determine constitutionality doesn't belong in the legislature or the executive. The power to conduct foreign policy is primarily in the executive branch, with a substantial role for the legislature and no role for the judiciary. Because there's nothing about the nature of a court that's going to help you with foreign policy. They don't know who our enemies are, who our friends are, Who's cooperating with us? Who's cooperating with us behind their back? The executive knows that day to day, and there are certain members of Congress, because the Congress has an oversight role, that are briefed on that. It used to be called a political question, not political like you think of it, but political like they describe the legislature, which is Article 1 of the Constitution, and they describe the executive, Article 2 of the Constitution, as the political branches of government. And the Supreme Court often would write that these powers are uniquely consigned to the political branches of government, and the court should, out of an excess of caution, remain out of it, because it isn't in a position to be a decision maker. Well, somehow the lefties forgot that one, but they're being reminded of it now. And a national injunction has a judge in Boston playing president. He's going to stop something all over the country, and he's just in Boston. Remember how terrible it was? Things with Canada, terrible, awful. Oh my goodness, really awful. Well, Canada got upset that we're trying to readjust our auto industry. We don't want to be so dependent on them. We want to make a little more money with our auto industry, not, pay it all overseas into Canada. So Canada got kind of bitchy, and they went ahead and they put a big tax on our digital services, on their digital service with us, where I guess across the border we rely on them a lot. And I don't know, we tripled the tariff, and in 2 days, it all got settled. This is about the 20th time his tariff negotiating strategy has resulted in a big victory for the United States. It's about time for the Wall Street Journal to say, Mr. President, you were right, we were wrong. If the Wall Street Journal were right, the stock market now would be crashing. It is so wrong that the stock market is now setting a record that way. July 1st, after pressure from Trump, pressure is an easy word, I guess, the University of Pennsylvania took all the trophies away from the bullies, the men who put dresses on and conduct and enter female sports, and where they are completely awful competitors in the male sport, they win medals, like Leah Thomas or Thompson, who I think used to be somewhere around 400, 500 as a male swimmer, and she set the record for female swimmers. Well, her medal's been taken away from her. Her record has been taken away from her. And the women who have those records have been reinstated. Now, this one I don't get. I don't get this one. I don't understand where it gets any support either. What's the point of letting a biological male compete with women? Are we supposed to make a ridiculous statement like men and women are exactly the same? I mean, there are an awful lot of things, and I got to tell you, as I get older, there's even more than I thought where women are better than men. But men are bigger and stronger, mostly. Of course, there are exceptions. You got a little puny guy and you got some more. But by and large, it doesn't work that way. And when you're talking about athletes with finely toned bodies to the maximum you can be, well, then the men are obviously going to be superior. And all you have to do is look when they perform against each other. As I said, this guy was like number 400 as a male swimmer, and he's number 1 as a female swimmer. How about boxing together? What are you, crazy? I think that's a crime. My father, who taught me to box, said to me, if you ever hit a woman, I'll beat you up. And he never hit me. He said, "You're not a man." He used to give me like these frightening lectures about it, because he always felt a little guilty teaching me how to box. So he wanted to teach me how to respect what he taught me. He would say, never start a fight, but then always finish it. But that's a different story. He used to say, never touch a woman. If she's going to hit you, put your hands over your face. And if you can't take a woman hitting you, go work out. There's something wrong with you. But I don't ever want to ever hear that you hit a woman. Because nothing else, almost anything else I'll forgive. I won't forgive that. Because I'll decide that my son's not a man. He really did it. I mean, he did like brainwashing on it. When I became mayor, the first thing I did is institute a program called Behind Closed Doors to protect women from abuse. I go nuts over that, nuts, all because of my upbringing. And we did a great job. My cops did a great job in bringing down abuse. We figured out that women are afraid to report it. We figured out that women call, then they change their mind, and the poor cop gets beaten up. And we decided that we would keep independent records so that we didn't have to use the woman as a witness. We started to build shelters. My friend Joe Torre built one of the great groups of shelters called, very appropriately, Safe at Home. So that if we could say to the woman, if you testify against the animal, we can put you in a shelter and we can protect you from it. Because she's not going to, she calls the police because she's in a panic. Police show up, the things have calmed down. Now she says to herself, the animal's going to go to jail and be out in 3 days. And what's he going to do? He's going to come after me. You got to solve that part of the problem. That part of the issue with these Democrats and even some of the other weaklings in law enforcement, they don't think their way through the whole problem. They leave a big part open. You got to think your way through the whole problem and get to the end of it. Also on July 1st, Paramount agreed to pay $16 million to Donald Trump for the most outrageous bit of fraud I've ever seen. It was a question to Kamala Harris. The answer she gave was perfect proof that she doesn't have a brain. She has a bunch of mutton in her head. I mean, I don't remember it. I'm not even going to play it because it's ridiculous. But by the time she finished this answer, nobody knew what she was talking about. So they didn't just edit the question out. They took an answer from somewhere else, took that out and put that answer there. And it was somewhat better. What the hell's that all about? Being totally crooked. They didn't tell you they did it. So now all the big shots at CBS are all upset that this happened.
Not listening.
Well, Bill.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war.
Oh, don't even worry about it. So the first answer you heard there, you don't even understand what she's talking about. Then they put in an answer. It's very, very short. It's not particularly good either, but it isn't like totally crazy. But just think of the goal of these people. Like, I suppose I gave an answer that was a bad answer, right? You think they'd put in a good one for me? And then Leslie Stahl is all upset. I don't know, Leslie, you ever do that? Oh, I don't want to get you upset. I mean, I'm not accusing you. I'm just asking. If you got so upset at their fraudulently moving a question around, do you have a guilty conscience? Do you have a conscience? Do you experience guilt? Those are legitimate questions, Ted. So the president got 16 million. I think he's probably going to give it to somebody, but we'll see. Maybe he should give it to us, Ted. We could build a big network.
Yeah, we could get more cameras and light. We can get another light.
Mr. President, give us the 16 million and we'll take on CBS.
Yeah, we can get a couple more lights too.
We'll just say the non-CBS. What's the, yeah, we get another, at least we could buy one more light, right? I think if we had 16 million, we could buy one more light.
I think so. You like the shirt,
Oh,
Mayor?
there he is.
You like the shirt?
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. There's our hero. You know, we wouldn't be able to do this show without him.
Right.
Sometimes he and I do this show like it's ridiculous. Last minute.
Yeah.
We've done it in the weirdest places.
We have. Haven't we? And the most interesting places, too.
New Palestine. Remember, we did it in
yeah, that was one of the more interesting places. We went to East Palestine before almost anyone. In a garage. And I remember we were there and people started saying how close the accident scene was.
Yeah.
And then they started talking about the air quality being poor. And I'm thinking, we're doing this at this garage. Are we in the evacuation zone?
On your head, but she was kind of reinforcing it.
Right. And I started thinking, gee, maybe we should go do the show from the hotel, but we were there.
Biden showed up a year and a half. Biden showed up a year and a half later.
Well, they made Mayor Pete had to wait in the hallway.
Well, you know, the mayor kept him waiting for an hour and a half. The problem really was, a lot of people blame it on me because the guy came in and said, Pete Buttigieg is outside and he has a 9 o'clock appointment. And he looked at the guy and he said, well, I'm talking to Mayor Giuliani. And he kept him waiting. Honestly, Ted, 45 minutes, right?
Oh, my goodness, at least.
Was he in a huff when we went outside?
He was
he shouldn't have done that. He could have just said, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, we didn't see you. There it is. Pete Buttigieg is left waiting in the hall while Rudy Giuliani speaks with East Palestine Mayor Trent Conaway, who slammed something or other. He actually said, well, maybe I'll learn something in talking to this guy. He's handled some of the worst emergencies ever. The other guy, he doesn't even know how to handle trucks.
Right.
Well, let me see now. Let me get the rest of these. A couple more.
Border numbers.
So now we have on July 2nd, we have the statistics coming in for June. 6,000 people were arrested for crossing the border illegally. Biden averaged about 130,000 during similar period. And by the way, Biden absorbed about 70% of them. Meaning, if he got 150,000, we'd end up with 120,000. Would you like to know how many of the 6,000 we took in? Ted?
How many, Mayor?
Goose egg.
Wow.
The month before, we took in 10.
Wow. So that's got to be the first time ever.
It is. And then, of course, the big, beautiful bill. Biggest tax reduction ever. Maybe even more important, we avoid the biggest tax increase ever. Because these are taxes that when he first passed them, he couldn't get them permanent, so he had to put a tag on. He had to put an ending on them. So they had to be extended. So if these were reversed, all of a sudden you've gotten used to a much lower level of tax than you used to have. All of a sudden, boom, you wouldn't have even money to buy food. Meanwhile, he's added on other taxes. And here's where I get really, really angry. And I'm going to have to take a deep breath before I say this, because I'm really, really angry. The Democrats repeat, like they send these things around, and they repeat, this is a big tax break for the billionaires and the rich. First of all, the first group of tax breaks helped the poor more than they helped the rich by something like 40% more. That's just the reality. This is even more, because think of the new ones that he added and tell me how the Democrats can get away with saying this is intended to help the rich. You're not going to have to pay taxes on tips. How many billionaires are waiters? Do you know a billionaire that's a waiter? You think billionaires and millionaires are going to be affected by whether or not they're getting a break because they don't have to pay taxes on tips? How about childcare? Well, maybe Elon, because he's got 435 children. But other than Elon, nobody else, no other. The child tax credit, what is it, $3,000? So a millionaire is going to actually care about that? That isn't to benefit the poor and the middle class? Of course it is. And how about Social Security? I'm telling you, a guy is worth $1 billion doesn't even. Social Security is not even a rounding number. If you look at the tax breaks that he put in, they're all for working people. And they can range from working poor to working middle to upper middle class. But they sure as hell aren't independently wealthy people. I'm sorry, they don't work for tips. They're not worried about getting paid for overtime. Now, there is no newspaper that I know of, not even the Post and the Wall Street Journal. It's like they're brain dead. It's like, how can you get away with saying that? So Schumer came out of his little cave the other day and said this, but he doesn't allow people to ask any questions because they'll ask a question about Israel, and he's the biggest rat fink in Washington who double-crossed his own people. If it were up to him, there would still be Hamas, Hezbollah, and Assad would still be in Syria. Now you say, well, why is that the case, Rudy? Because he wanted to take out Bibi Netanyahu. You think any of that would have happened without Bibi Netanyahu? He did it against the will of Biden. And Schumer turned out to be the hitman that tried to persuade the people of Israel to vote against him. People of Israel took one look at him and said, oh, we know about Jews like you. What a disgraceful human being. Well, then, how about Eden Alexander? President got him home. So now all the American hostages are out. And Eden was effusive in his praise of the president, to such an extent that Eden said that from the moment Trump got elected, immediately the treatment of the hostages changed.
When they announced that he had won the presidency, how the treatment was, it changed.
It's a new place, a good place. New
Oh,
people, new everything. Yeah, food,
so they treated you better?
Oh,
Wow.
sure.
Because you were coming in and they were afraid of you.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
They weren't too afraid of Biden.
You know,
it's very quiet, but it's soft.
You know, they don't bother to report it, but his description of what happened to him is, I mean,
that's what he was saying there.
They tortured him, but they don't get tried by the international court. Netanyahu does.
Yeah.
No one is paying attention to the following, but the communist candidate for mayor of New York and the Islamic extremist candidate for mayor of New York, one and the same, Rohan Mambumbi, says that if Bibi comes to America, he's going to arrest him. Here's the difference. When I was mayor, I said if Arafat came to America, I would arrest him. Except I was a U.S. attorney, extraordinarily accomplished public official who had ruined the mafia, taken over Las Vegas and turned it around, changed the steel industry, took a company out of bankruptcy. I don't know, those are only half the things I did. I wasn't like a rich, ne'er-do-well bum like this. And he says he's going to arrest Netanyahu because of the International Criminal Court. Did anyone ever tell him we don't belong to the International Criminal Court? What is he, just like a mindless jackass? How is he going to arrest him? He has no jurisdiction to arrest him. You're going to tell a New York City police officer to make an illegal arrest? And what happens to Bibi's diplomatic immunity? I mean, I'd have to let the worst perverts and bums go, which largely makes up a good portion of the UN delegation, because of diplomatic immunity. They kind of specialize in certain crimes that you don't even want to know about. And he's going to arrest Bibi Netanyahu? And he's running for mayor? I mean, first of all, Bibi gets Secret Service protection. I don't think Trump would let him do it. I mean, Trump is trying to get Bibi out of the ridiculous indictment that he's in. And I know that case. I almost represented him in that case. The case is ridiculous. It's about getting cigars from a friend. And the guys who are prosecuting him, if there are crooks in Israel, the guys who are prosecuting him are big-time crooks. Well, it was very interesting. They did it around a bust of Benjamin Franklin. And I wanted to find out why they picked Franklin. It's a great bust of Benjamin Franklin. I don't remember that one in the White House. I love when the president sits like right behind him is the big portrait of the great President Ronald Reagan. And I kind of can see Ronald Reagan is looking down at him and saying, "You're doing a good job. Don't let him bother you. Don't let him bother you. The more they bother you, the better job you're doing." Oh, I forgot one other achievement. Jobs are soaring. Yes. Stock market has hit a record. This is the Wall Street Journal predicted recession based on tariffs. It'll give you an idea of how much the Wall Street Journal knows about the economy. I suggest that you count on me more than them on the economy. I told you what would happen. They did the same thing to Reagan. They did the same thing to me. They refuse because they're so stubborn and because they never leave their little ivory box. I don't think they're allowed out. I think they go into like an ivory box limousine and are taken home to Westchester. And then they're brought to the Wall Street Journal in an ivory box. And they're put in their little ivory box upstairs. And then they keep saying the same things they've been saying for 35 years. But haven't they figured out now that if you reduce taxes the right way, you can actually make money? That you don't. What they do is the following. Let's say the government doesn't have a sales tax, but let's say they did. or the New York City sales tax. Well, I don't even know what it is now. Is it 8%? Well, whatever it is, let's say it's 8%, okay? If I reduce that tax to 4%, I will guarantee you I will collect more money from the 4% tax than from the 8% tax. Now you say, Giuliani, how do you know that? I know that because I did it. I cut the sales tax in half and collected more money from the lower one than the higher one. I cut the hotel occupancy tax in more than half. I collected 3 times more. It's as simple as you get more business. See, these people don't understand business. So how is it that I always love to use this example? 12, 15 years ago, if you bought that big plasma TV I'm looking at right here, and it's not even that big nowadays, it probably cost you about $8,000. You know what that one costs? A little under 1. And it's better. Now, why can they do that? Because they're selling 20 times more of them at $1,000 than if they put them at 8. You got to find the right price point. Part of the art of taxing is find the right tax point where you collect the most money. And it isn't by making the tax higher and higher and higher. What you do then, like the communist Islamic extremist who wants to be mayor, is you drive people out. So he's going to collect another $10 billion by raising the taxes on the rich. The worst people to raise taxes on right now are the rich, because they're paying all the taxes anyway. And they are extremely capable of moving in a dime. They probably have residences in 5 places. So they just pick up everything and say, if I stay out of New York over 100 and whatever number days, 170 days or whatever, I will. I'll keep a chart. And you can take your taxes and shove them up your... Look, Zoran, Daddy made a lot of money. You are a ne'er-do-well, silly boy. You've got no idea. You don't have the foggiest idea how this all works. I hope, and that's the best explanation for you. You may also be very evilly motivated. I don't know. Your hatred of the Jewish people is frightening. It's frightening when I hear that. It's hard for me to attribute that. Some of the stuff about capitalism, and I get it. I mean, none of you kids understand economics. It's way too hard for you. Way beyond your 14 IQ. Or the IQ you used to have that's reduced because you got to find your stupid little phone to add 3 and 2. So I don't know. I haven't been exposed to this Zoran Mubadubi. Would you tell me his name so I don't?
Zoran Mamdani.
Well, let me get it. Mom, like M-O-N?
Ma'am, yes.
Like ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am Donnie.
Like Danny.
So he is now there's also, he's gotten in trouble because he said he was black.
Right.
In order to get preference in school. He said he was Asian and black. Well, I'm looking at him. He doesn't look black. Does he look black to you?
No. He was, to be fair, born.
He was black. What did he do?
He was born in Uganda.
He put on some non-black changer or something?
To be fair, he was born in Uganda.
That doesn't make him black.
No. He put down black. I think it's black/African American. For what it's worth.
Why would a black from African American get preferences? I mean, a new one coming here. Aren't the preferences for those who were subjected to slavery?
You would think.
When the hell was he ever subjected to slavery? And his family is richer than most white people. I mean, that's all a big fraud. The guy is a big phony. A big phony. He wants to arrest Netanyahu. He wants to defund the police. He says the police are cruel and incompetent. He doesn't want to just defund the police. He wants to take away the police. And he wants the social workers to make arrests. Are you kidding me? Social worker is going to arrest a Tran-Diragua gang member who specializes in chopping heads off to get attention? Like that's going to work? Social worker is going to come. The guy's going to be all excited, and the social worker is going to say, please use your words. See if you can calm down and use your words. And before that, he's going to have a knife in his throat. Is it impossible for them to conceive of the fact that we live in a partially evil world? And that it is the job of people in public office who are adults to protect other people. We talked a lot on my earlier show about the Declaration of Independence. And I love doing that as a discipline very often because it takes you back to logical thinking. But James Madison made the best observation about this that anyone has ever made. If men were angels, we wouldn't need government. And you know, it's almost true, at least as far as violent crimes are concerned. Don't get all upset, women, because you don't commit a lot of violent crimes. So like the number of murders in New York, I almost have it memorized. And here's the weirdest thing. When crime is up or crime is down, the distribution of murders is about the same. About 7 to 8 out of 10 of people who get murdered and do the murdering are black. About 5% of women. So if I'm looking for a murderer, I sure as hell I'm not looking for a woman, by and large. I'm looking for a man. Men commit murder. The other violent crimes also men commit, but not quite in the same disproportionate way. And men commit a lot more crimes than women. You go figure it out, figure out the difference if you want. You could go back to the usually too often used hunter-gatherer, homemaker, ancient, you know, in the animal kingdom, the male is the hunter-gatherer, and not always. You know, there are some animals where there's a stay-at-home father. And mama goes out and hunts. Not all that much. You want to know why New York City is crooked? I'm going to do just one little teeny example. New York City has just purchased 5 bathrooms, toilets. They spent $5 million for the toilets. Tell me, I'm going to let you think for a minute. I don't know if we have to take a break or whatever, but I'm going to let you think for a minute. New York, this is like a math thing here. New York bought 5 toilets to put out on the street. How much did they pay for the 5 toilets? It's only 5. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think like a public toilet would cost?
Not including all
50,000?
Not including the piping. If it's just the toilet itself.
Yeah, but there are pipes all over. New York has more pipes than it has people.
$10,000 a toilet.
If you ever look under New York City, there's a whole city under there.
I'd say $10,000 a toilet.
You just got to make sure you don't put it in the wrong pipe. It doesn't end up in Soros's apartment or something. How about They paid $5 million for 5 toilets. That's I can do that without taking out my my phone there. That's $1 million, $1 million toilet. Here, take a look at the picture. If you get a chance, you should go in. When are you gonna get to go in a $1 million toilet? That's even more than like at Mar-a-Lago or something. The toilets at Mar-a-Lago didn't cost $1 million, Ted. Would you show the picture? I mean, this is really a valuable picture. That's a $5 million toilet. Oh, a $1 million, I'm sorry. It's a $1 million toilet. Maybe there's like gold plating inside. That is, now, if that was put up in the middle of the desert, I might understand. You know how many pipes there are below the ground for that thing? It looks like it's near Central Park, too. They got a big sign on there, too. I don't know what the sign says. All gender. Oh, wow. It's an all gender bathroom. Whoa. You're gonna get some sexual irregularities in that one. This is pervert heaven. Democrats must love this. The party of perverts. Well, you know, they reduced the penalties for child molesters in California. Explain to me why, for any reason, you would reduce the penalties for child molesters. Oh, well. So what else do we have to catch them up on before we let them go enjoy? We let them go enjoy one more Frankfurter or one more hamburger, right, or go look at a patriotic movie.
Right. Well, tune in to Newsmax.
After all that analysis of the Constitution, of the Declaration of Independence, which unless you listen to the first hour, you didn't get. But I'm going to put it out as a podcast because I think it'd be good to. We always read it and we listen to it. I'm not sure we understand it completely, what it really was. The Declaration of Independence, yes, it did memorialize our independence, but our independence was voted on and declared 2 days before the Declaration was voted on. We voted on and approved our independence on July 2nd, 1776. It'll be the 250th anniversary next year. On July 4th, they agreed on the language of the Declaration of Independence. And the reason I think it's important that you understand it is, it's the best definition that I know of what makes an American. So years ago, I think when he was president, our greatest president, Abraham Lincoln, was presiding over an immigration ceremony. And when it was over, a very nice young man who had just become a citizen, and there were people there from like the Mayflower Society, and people who had been citizens forever and ever. And he came up to the president, who was very accessible, like Trump is, and he said, "Mr. President, I feel so overwhelmed by this. Here I am, just here, and just became a citizen. I studied my things, and I feel very proud that I passed my test. But it's going to take me so long to be as good an American as those people from the Mayflower." Lincoln grabbed his hands and he said, "Sir, just think about what makes an American." So the guy was like nervous and stumbled a little. And he said, "Well, let me tell you what makes an American. Americans aren't one race. We're not one ethnic group. We're not one religion. We're not one anything. Italians are Italians. Chinese are Chinese. Germans are Germans. Americans are everybody who comes here. So what brings us together? Because we got a lot of patriotism here. Look at all these men who are giving up their lives at war. He said, we're a country that's tied together by common values. We don't agree on everything, but we agree on the basics. So the man said, what are the basics? He said, well, you can start with the Declaration of Independence. And then the concepts that emerged, not just from the Constitution, but the Bill of Rights. He said, the more you understand those, and the more you practice those, to that extent, you're a better American than the guy who came over on the Mayflower, but doesn't really understand them anymore. That's what makes a good American. Because we're a country of ideas and ideals, not a country of ethnic, religious, genetic background. Now, maybe our wisest president, and maybe the best definition of a highly complex citizenship and a highly complex nation that's brought together by common beliefs. Now, this is a country where we're allowed to disagree with each other. But until now, we never seem to have a problem with fundamental beliefs. Well, maybe during the Civil War we did, right? But mostly we did. And now we're like split on fundamental beliefs, and that's dangerous to a country like us. And then to overlay that with people coming in that have no regard for our values and may in fact be antagonistic to those, puts us in a very dangerous situation. Because as a free country, we can't enforce people, but it is perfectly consistent with our democracy to say, if you're coming into the United States, we have a right to determine if you love America, or we don't have to let you in. We don't have to let anybody in. We're stuck with the people that are here. We can set the criteria for the people who come in to enhance us. Not just enhance us materially, but enhance us spiritually. We don't have to take everybody. In fact, we can't take everybody. And since we can't take everybody, we should have fair and sensible principles that distinguish between the people we take and the people we don't take. And the biggest problem with our illegals is you get all these people who wait online, follow the law, they get screwed, and these other people just jump the line and get in. And you can't tolerate that for too much. So we're on our way, I think. And next show or two, when we do it on immigration, I'll show you how I think these remarkable achievements that the Trump administration has had in getting control over the border is going to help us fix that. It's going to help us really, really fix that.
That's right. And we want people to tune in to Newsmax in 15 minutes where you'll be on. I was just on the phone.
Well, then I really do want to alert them to one other thing. The president today said that he was very disturbed with his conversation with Putin. I don't know exactly why. I can suspect. The way he changed the entire, it's like, you know, you're playing a game like we were at Iran, right? And Trump took the entire game and turned it over. Took it all, he threw all the pieces off the board, and he started a whole new game with us in charge. He's got to do that with Putin. Do I have a lot of reservations about Zelensky? Yeah. Or even about the structure of the government of Ukraine? Yeah. Am I in any way confused about in a comparison between Putin and Zelensky, who's the bad guy and who's the evil guy? And do I have any doubt that this was an aggressive, illegal, inhumane, indecent attack by Russia on Ukraine? No. So, do I think we should get in a world war over it? Of course not. Do I think American troops should die over it? No. But do I think that we should give Ukraine the ability, like to some extent we did with Israel, to fight back? And I think we do have to say, but that the Ukrainians, despite the corruption at the highest levels of their government, which, damn it, they got to straighten out. They did a lot with what we gave them. We should not leave them out there to be taken advantage of by Putin. And I don't know what it is, Mr. President. You would know it better than I do. But he needs a major kick in the balls, if he has them. Spies sometimes pretend they do. You got to get control of this, the way you did in Iran. And don't, I'm going to tell you, based on my experience with bullies and my little bit of experience with Putin, he's not ready to take you on. He's not even a quarter of the man that you are. I think if you hit him back hard, it's going to be easier than Iran. So it is true. I know there's a great deal of anger at the neocons and the warmongers and whatever else we call them. But we can't let Russia win. And if we let Russia win, we do let China win. And therefore, I know there's a great feeling if we pay too much attention to Ukraine, we're taking our eye off China. Not so. China has their eye on Ukraine. You did a great thing in pushing China back with what you did in Iran. Xi Jinping looked at that and said, I wonder if I would have done that. Putin thinks he's got a special relationship with you, and he's taking advantage of it. And I am pretty sure you're trying to figure out how to crash that open. And I'm looking forward to it. So, Ted, anything else we need to cover before we go look at fireworks?
Well, again, head over to Newsmax in 10 minutes. Head over to Newsmax. And yeah, watch the first half of the show if you really want to
you got to good understanding watch. I'm going to put it. Yeah. We're going to put it on special.
Right.
Please, just to humor me, watch my piece on the Declaration of Independence and tell me if you like it. And if you do, I may retire and become a history teacher. My mother was a teacher. Damn good one. You know what she was good at? This is what I always think makes a great teacher. Creating an enthusiasm for her subject. Whether she taught, believe it or not, she taught English and she taught a little history. And she didn't know what she liked. She liked English better, actually. She loved grammar. So anything else we haven't covered? Let me see.
We're looking through here.
Look at my list here. I got to look. We covered the 4th. We covered his winning streak. We covered the
New York Police Department wants the ability to shoot down drones
in the history of the world. I didn't answer the question, but I can do it quick. Is Mandani a communist? Yes. Anybody who wants to take over the means of production, that comes right out of Marx I don't think that kid even knows what he's talking about, but he saw it in Marx and he's repeating it. And by the way, he's completely unqualified to be mayor of New York City. Never done a damn thing in his life except take his father's money. Rich little bastard. Let's see what else we have here.
Yep. And maybe to wrap up, the NYPD mayor.
He's thinking of Bowman for being his school's chancellor. Yeah. The guy who rang the alarm. All the kids will be running out of the school every day.
Crazy.
When Jerkoff hits the alarm. Ooh. How do we miss this one? I gotta find it. Zara Rowan. You have any idea who Zara Rowan is?
I do not.
Zara Rowan urged killing the president a couple of years ago. She's working for Zohan Bohan. How can he have a guy that wanted Trump dead? That's not a little extreme? Zara Rowan is her name. Let me see if I can get a picture of her so that. Also, we never got to listen to the great interview that was done on Fox of Z. Van Fleet, who was a survivor of Mao's revolution, who had some very interesting things to say about Zohran Mamdani. Do we have that, Ted?
Yeah. How do you? Yeah, we will have that. Yep, we do have it.
Because PolitiFact declared that it was false that Zohran Mamdani.
What show was she on? Sorry,
it was on Laura Ingraham.
Z. Van.
Yeah, so PolitiFact just said he's not a communist. He just likes the state to take over the means of production. He also wants to cancel all student debt. Oh, he wants to eliminate billionaires. How do you eliminate billionaires? You kill them? He actually said he wants to eliminate billionaires. Well, I mean, they're
about socialism and communism. And he's talking about state-owned businesses back in 2021, Mamdani, and a lot of free stuff. What's your take on this, and what's your warning tonight to America?
Yeah, I want people to know he is more than just the typical woke Marxist that focus on identity politics, DEI, and oppressor and press narrative. He is a full-fledged communist. I don't know whether the New York voters understand what it means. That seize means of production. That means abolish private property. That means the state will take over businesses, capital, land, and the resources. And that's the place I came from. I shopped in the government-owned grocery store. And what it is like, long line, ration, and empty shelf. And I lived in a government-granted housing. My family of 5 had 1.5 room, and we were lucky because we share bathroom with 4 other families. Others, they have an outhouse. And I grew up in and I endured the educational system that required that every day we raise our class consciousness. And what that means is to follow the party line. And I escaped that world. I came here for freedom. And if America falls, all of us have no place to go. New Yorkers, you have to wake up. I'm so glad President Trump sees through it and call him a communist. He is a communist.
Just want to know one. That's what you say when I was a kid. And she was a communist, and she's a convert. And there's nothing better than converts, I'll tell you that. But I mean, the guy promises free buses, free health care, free daycare, city-run grocery stores. Get rid of the police. Use social workers for the police. He's a complete foe of capitalism. I'm not sure he knows what capitalism is, but he's against it. And by the way, New York City is the biggest capitalist city in the world. I don't know if moron realizes it, because I can't imagine he would have the intellectual discipline to concentrate on a budget the way I did. Well over 40% of the resources to run New York City comes from the financial sector. So like Pittsburgh was a city dependent on steel until it was stolen from them by China and moved over to Magagorsk, to Russia rather, and to China. New York City depends on finance. And if you're going to talk like this, they're all going to move out. They're the billionaires you're going to tax. I mean, is there any way to... I don't know. We got to look into his old man. What was he? Was he?
Yeah, we'll look into that. We'll head over to Newsmax. We're about to be on live with.
Okay, who are we be on with?
Lydia.
Oh, my good friend Lydia.
Yeah,
we've been friends for a long time. She is one remarkably good journalist. We're 100% in favor of Lydia.
All righty. Well, what a fast-paced, great Independence Day edition, Mayor.
Yeah, nice songs too, right?
Right. Then maybe we'll close out.
What will she close out with?
We got to close.
God Bless America. Kate Smith.
Sure. Let's do it.
Oh, how about It's Great to Be in America? How about our friend, Trump's a friend?
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. That's a little more upbeat.
All righty. Well, so head on over to Newsmax. We'll be on in just a moment.
Am I complaining?
What's that?
I'm not complaining.
About what? No, I'm telling folks to head on over to Newsmax in just one moment.
You know, his mother just sold an apartment for $2 million.
All right.
Ramba-damba-damba-doo.
Well, we'll talk more about that on Monday.
He knows the difficulties of being poor.
Yeah. Good. All right. All righty. You ready for Newsmax?
You know, it's getting really nervous. Silicon Valley.
All right. So we're going to sign off and head over to Newsmax. Are you ready, Mayor?
I'm ready. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to say goodnight to our Independence Day audience.
Well, thank you very, very much. And God bless America on its 249th birthday. And the next time we celebrate this holiday, it'll be its 250th anniversary. Wow. I think it's the longest functioning republic in the history of the world.
God bless America.
I thought I said that, but I will say it again. God bless America.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. I thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able